There's currently a rather pessimistic view that Japan is irretrievably embarked on the militarist road. But I feel there are still Japanese people who pursue peace. There's a clash of these opposing views in Japanese society today.
Suehiro Furukawa was formerly a ground self-defense force officer. One day he decided to quit and become a truck driver.
The so-called self-defense forces are no different from the Imperial Army.
Furukawa says Article 9 of the Constitution is no longer taken seriously.
They can't tell the truth outright. They go on saying self-defense, self-defense. But they are all set to expand and attack.
Furukawa joined the force in the 70s and was assigned to operate own models of US-made tanks. For over a decade, he witnessed as a soldier how Japan, instead of taking stock of its past, kept strengthening its military and keeping its aggressive warring ambitions alive.
We were taught techniques in guerrilla or jungle combat. I'll say the force trains its soldiers to kill. For 60 years, the government repeatedly said it won't fight a war. It talks about peace only because it's the politically correct thing to say. In reality, it keeps moving towards its expansionist goals step by step. Ordinary citizens don't know about this. They'll be even more disappointed if they knew.
The Etajima Self-Defense Force training base. Before the Second World War, imperial troops were trained here. After the war, Japan's army was replaced with self-defense forces. But an officer we met here tells us the army's Bushido spirit lives on. The only differences between the self-defense forces and a full military are the restrictions on arms purchase and the absence of court-martialing. The sun disk flag is raised at the camp every day in solemn ceremony. After Japan's surrender, many have spurned the flag as a representation of militarism, but it has remained a symbol of pride for Japan's armed forces. Many in Japan feel that the country's defeat in the Second World War has dwarfed the nation, denying it the respect it deserves as an economic power. Therefore, to be able to join in the US-led war against Iraq held a special meaning to Japan's self-defense forces. This is Colonel Masahiro Sato of the Self-Defense Force. Sato is among the first 1,000 soldiers sent to Iraq last year, in the largest overseas deployment of Japanese troops since the Second World War.
A most admired commanding officer was sent to stand on the stage and announce the start of the mission. We're very proud to be the first Japanese troops to be deployed overseas.
The Self-Defense Forces made a video of its Iraq mission to counter domestic critics. It depicts the soldiers' families in Japan talking about the mission with pride. Japan's constitution limits its military forces to the direct defense of Japan. The Japanese government justifies its involvement in the Iraq war as a joint defense operation with the US.
In all the years I've joined the Self-Defense Force, I've never imagined it'd be possible for Japan to send its troops overseas. It wasn't allowed before because of Japan's relations with other countries.
Besides a new constitution, Junichiro Koizumi's cabinet is proposing many new laws, allowing overseas deployment of troops on joint defense missions, preemptive attacks on enemy territory or naval vessels, and the inclusion of Taiwan in Japan's joint defense strategy with the US. In its defense guidelines, Japan's hypothetical enemy had always been represented as country X. Last year, the guidelines started to explicitly list China as the principal security threat to Japan.
Why would they think that anything in the Constitution can be changed? By removing no war and peaceful development provisions, Japan is essentially back on the road to being a military power. We need to be alert to the return of Japanese militarism.
Furukawa now lives in a small town near Kobe, away from the military base where he used to serve. He says Japanese society is dominated by distorted values. Japan wants to shed its war burden before it has learned its lesson. He says he's glad he's no longer in the self-defense forces. Did you quit because you were disappointed?
Disappointed? My feeling is Japan should be more aware of its responsibilities.
The morning rush hour in Chuo District in Osaka.
淀屋橋駅頭のご通勤途上の皆さん、おはようございます。私たちは
400 Osaka citizens have filed a lawsuit against the government's unconstitutional deployment of self-defense forces in Iraq. But these commuters seem too busy for the message. Only several dozen flyers were handed out in about 1 hour.
だからこれもマスコミが正確に全部伝えないので皆さんも知らん顔して歩いていきますが。
The Osaka citizens are represented by Takanori Ota, a lawyer in his late 80s. As a young Imperial Army soldier, Ota was stationed in Changchun, in Japanese-occupied Jilin province in northeastern China during the war. He says he's scandalized by the government's decision to send its troops to Iraq.
On one hand, Koizumi keeps saying our soldiers are safe in Iraq. On the other hand, he's hiring locals to protect Japanese troops there. It drives us crazy to hear this.
Ota thinks Japanese politicians never seriously reflected on Japan's war past. Sending troops abroad on humanitarian missions is only their excuse to prepare the military for the next war.
What are they sent there for if not to fight? Now we're even helping the U.S. invade another country. The public is kept in the dark. They still think Japan is peace-loving, but that's over with.
Germany, also defeated in the Second World War, has been struggling in the past 6 decades to emerge from the shadows of war. Gisela Clark, who witnessed the Nazis' rise to power, says she's relieved to see Germany evolve into a peace-loving country. Since the war ended, Germany never stopped seeking forgiveness from its neighbors.
It's a little difficult, of course, for us to deal with all this. But I'm convinced we'll get through it.
60 years on, Germany has a lesson to share.
Jedes Land muss seinen eigenen Weg in der Auseinandersetzung mit den hellen wie dunklen Seiten seiner Geschichte finden. Ich kann aber eine deutsche Erfahrung mitteilen. Und die ist die, dass man durch einen sensiblen und auch selbstkritischen Umgang mit seiner eigenen Geschichte nicht Freunde verliert, sondern Freunde gewinnt.
The Cold War began almost immediately after the Nazis' defeat, splitting Germany in two. Something that forced Germany to face its history and work to gain respect from former enemies. In Asia, rancor still broils between China and Japan. Next Sunday on the Pearl Report, we'll look at how an increasingly powerful China confronts its mighty neighbor, Japan.
Up shortly on Pearl, it's all the day's top stories in our news at 7:30, followed by the weather report.
对面海叶东是我们中国的慰安妇，可以说是南京还是中国甚至是亚洲地区最大的慰安所遗址。
京盛雄專門研究日軍侵佔南京時期嘅歷史。當年日軍喺南京市中心設立慰安所，接待高級軍官。呢度而家係南京市中心嘅商業地區，推土機已經開到嚟。
開發商要在這裡開發，如果不吃掉呢，保存下來，那麼南京有關部門就要損失幾千萬來到幾個億的人民幣的價值。他從經濟上考慮，他要吃掉。而我們這片保存下的遺跡，就是日本建立慰安所制度的推的證據。
南京唔少人認為日軍喺南京設立嘅慰安所係中華民族嘅恥辱，唔應該保留。京盛雄就批評係唔尊重歷史。
歷史由兩方面構成的，一方面是中國人民光榮的歷史構成的，另一方面呢，它也是由我們中國遭受外國侵略、遭受封建專制壓迫的歷史構成。這兩方面共同構成了中國近現代史，構成了南京的近現代史。缺少了任何一方面，這個歷史就不完整的。
呢個喺北京舉行嘅展覽係一連串抗戰勝利60週年嘅活動之一。喺抗戰信息嘅背後，一再強調共產黨領導人嘅功績。曾經喺中共遼寧省委黨校做教授嘅張一波認為，新中國所描繪嘅抗戰歷史一直都忽略國民黨嘅貢獻。
所以在中國就很奇怪啊，打了14年，啊，只有共產黨八路軍、新四軍、抗聯軍的人。
佢話就好似918事件發生嘅時候，國民黨堅持不抵抗政策，但係亦都有軍官抗命，同日軍激戰5個鐘頭，打死打傷日軍24人。呢一段事蹟，國內以往好少人提到。中國政府近年開始重新檢視國民黨喺抗戰歷史嘅貢獻。張一波話：仍然未還歷史本來嘅面目。
為什麼過去不講呢？過去當然咱不能表揚蔣介石了，蔣介石是戰犯，國內戰爭打完了以後就沒完沒了的搞階級鬥爭，搞着搞着就搞文化大革命，完全顛倒了歷史，所以呢就耽誤時間了，沒有正確的總結這段歷史，到現在也沒有。
而喺現實環境，要寫出歷史真實一面，亦都唔容易。作家余傑最近親身去日本考察，評述中日關係，但係佢本書面世冇幾耐，就受到宣傳部門壓力，唔准繼續發行，唔准加印。佢估計，除咗中日關係題材敏感，亦都同提及國民黨喺抗戰時期嘅戰績有關。
比如說，對於以蔣介石為首的國民政府的抗戰，將軍以上的將領就犧牲了200多位，像這樣的一些情況，我做了一些真實的，一些表達，而這樣的一些表達是那個共產黨他們所不願意看到的。
佢希望中國人一腔義憤表達過後，官方同民眾會更深刻咁關注抗戰歷史。
有那麼多人到使館去示威，然後在網絡上有2800萬人簽名反對日本加入聯合國的常任理事國，卻沒有幾個人願意來關心一下我們參加過抗戰的士兵、日軍的性暴力受害的這些婦女。我覺得真正要去做這樣的一件一件的切實的小事情，我覺得才是真正的愛國，才能夠真正擁有大國的尊嚴，在面對日本的時候，才真正有跟他來談判的資本。
崛起嘅中國要重拾尊嚴，日本嘅右翼步步進逼。百幾年嚟，中日兩國從未同時強盛，兩強對弈，唔少評論認為未來衝突難免。下一集我哋會睇下中日兩國嘅有心人，佢哋幾十年嚟努力化解仇恨，又有幾多知音呢？
跟住落嚟係本勁歌金曲。